When most people talk about the Atari 2600, they talk about Atari, Activision, and maybe a handful of arcade ports. But growing up, there was one logo that immediately got my attention: Imagic. For some reason, every time I saw that silver cartridge and those incredible fantasy box covers, I knew I was going to play something special. And looking back today, I think there was a reason for that, because Imagic may have been an underrated game company of the entire Atari era. For a brief moment, Imagic looked like it might become the biggest third-party developer in gaming. It was founded in 1981 by former Atari and Mattel employees. Imagic quickly became known for their colorful graphics, unique game concepts, and some of the most attractive box art in the Atari era. Today, we're taking a look at the company that brought us classics like Demon Attack, Atlantis, Dragonfire, and Cosmic R, and asking, were Imagic's games actually some of the best the Atari 2600 ever had? By 1981, the video game industry was exploding. Activision had already proven that former Atari employees could create great games outside Atari and succeed. Seeing that success, a group of former Atari and Mattel employees decided to start a company of their own. That company became Imagic. Unlike many competitors, Imagic focused heavily on presentation. Their boxes looked fantastic, their manuals had this premium feel, and many of their games featured graphics that often seemed impossible on the Atari 2600. When you saw an Imagic game on the shelf, you knew it was something unique. Let's start with the big one, Demon Attack. Released in 1982, this fixed-screen shooter quickly became one of Imagic's biggest successes, and one of the best-selling Atari 2600 games ever made. The premise was simple. You controlled a laser cannon on a planet's surface while waves of winged demons descended from above. Pretty basic, right? But what made Demon Attack special was how polished everything felt. The enemy animations were smooth, the attack patterns were random, the controls were responsive, and the game got increasingly intense as you survived longer. Honestly, if someone handed me an Atari joystick in 2026 and asked me to play one Atari game for an hour, Demon Attack would be near the top of my list. Now, if Demon Attack was the hit shooter, then Atlantis proved that Imagic wasn't a one-hit wonder. In Atlantis, you defend a legendary city against waves of attacking Gorgon ships. Cannons fire from both sides of the city, while enemies descended from above. The challenge ramps up steadily, the city slowly gets destroyed, and before long, you're fighting desperately just to keep Atlantis standing. It still holds up remarkably well today. A sequel to Atlantis was a weird one, Cosmic Arc. Every Atari collector eventually discovers that one game that makes them ask, how did they come up with this? And for Imagic, that often was Cosmic Arc. The game combines multiple gameplay styles into one package. You dodge meteors, explore space, collect creatures, and then bring them back to your arc. It was experimental, it felt different, and it feels exactly like the early 1980s. Imagic wasn't afraid to try odd concepts. Sometimes those risks paid off. Cosmic Arc was a great example. One of the most intense games on the Atari 2600 was Dragonfire. Dragonfire isn't mentioned nearly enough in discussions about great Atari games. The concept is simple. Cross a bridge while avoiding the fireballs from a dragon. Then enter the treasure chamber to collect the loot while dodging more Dragonfire. What follows is one of the most intense back-and-forth gameplay loops on the Atari 2600. Every successful run makes you feel like a hero. Every failure makes you immediately want another attempt. That is a sign of great game design. Well, when most people think of Imagic, they'll stop with Demon Attack, Atlantis, or even Cosmic Arc. But there were several other titles that are still worth exploring. Firefighter. You rescue people and extinguish fires in a burning building. Riddle of the Sphinx was an ambitious action-adventure inspired by Egyptian mythology. Star Voyager was a surprisingly ambitious first-person space combat game on the Atari 2600. Moonsweeper was often considered one of Imagic's hidden gems and an excellent showcase of late-generation Atari development. Many of these titles pushed the hardware further than players expected. So, what made Imagic different? There are mainly three things. Number one, presentation. Their box art was incredible. Walking into a toy store in 1982, that Imagic box practically jumped itself off the shelf. Number 2. Creativity. Imagic just wasn't cloning games. Many of their games introduced unique concepts and gameplay ideas. Number 3. Technical skill. These developers knew Atari hardware inside and out. Many had worked with Atari before leaving to start Imagic. That experience showed in the quality of the games. Unfortunately, the story does not have a happy ending. Like many companies in the industry, Imagic was hit hard by the video game crash of 1983. The company had grown rapidly and looked unstoppable, but the market collapsed and plans for even bigger success disappeared. Eventually, the company was liquidated in 1986. Their time at the top was brief, but their impact remains. When people talk about the greatest Atari 2600 developers, Activision usually gets most of the attention, and rightfully so. But Imagic deserves to be in that same conversation. For a few years, they produced some of the most visually impressive, creative, and downright fun games available for the Atari 2600. Games like Atlantis, Dragonfire, Cosmic Arc, and especially Demon Attack. They prove that their great gameplay doesn't require gigabits of storage, ray tracing, or an online multiplayer. All you need is an Atari joystick, a few kilobytes of memory, and a little imagination, or maybe a little Imagic. So, what was your favorite Imagic game? Was it Demon Attack, Dragonfire, or any other hidden gem? Let us know in the comments down below.